What are the four things that typically sink a candidate, not on the court, but in the interview? So we call it our interview final four. We hear lots of interview feedback when we send candidates. When I talk to our candidates, I would say the first thing. So if you're preparing for an interview, you need to go in. So let's say you're going for a director of FM role, you're going for a manager role, you're going for a supervisor role. You have seen a job description for what they're looking for, right? So before you sit for that interview, make sure that you have 2 or 3 specific stories that speak to the needs that organization is looking for. Their job description tells you what they're looking for, or typically if it's written appropriately, it should tell you what they're looking for. So you want to have 2 or 3 specific stories, meaning numbers, quantifiable actions that you took in your back pocket and you use them during the interview. Numbers of times I have gotten feedback from our clients that the candidate they interviewed just did not provide stories, did not provide specifics of their experience. And it's funny, I know that for a lot of people, interviewing can be very stressful. And these are people who I have worked with before, who I know they have stories, yet they get in the interview. Sometimes you just get caught up in the nerves or the interview, you get a little tense. So make sure you prepare prior to the interview, have those 2 or 3 stories in your back pocket, know what you're going to say, know how you're going to say it, and make sure you use them. Second one would be informality. This is an interesting one. And that's what I think makes interviewing difficult, is because a lot of the times, some of these perceptions are in the eyes of the people doing the interview. And you don't always know what those perceptions are till the end, but informality in both dress, language, the way you interact with that interview. I'll give you, informality in an age of Zoom. This is Peter Martin. If you or your organization is interested in advertising or partnering with the Healthcare Facilities Network, including sponsoring content, then please email me using the barcode in the lower right of your screen. From the trades level to the vice president level, from planning, design, construction, project management, compliance, safety, and security, the Healthcare Facilities Network reaches FM people where FM people are. It can be a big one. I've told this story before, but it's been a couple of years probably. There was a candidate who interviewed with an organization. It was a Zoom. It was the initial interview. And he did it from outside of a mall and not dressed like you would for an interview. Now, I know in the Zoom world, and this is a candidate who's a very strong candidate, but for whatever reason, decided to take this interview from outside at a mall, which did not go over well. I err towards dressing appropriately with this shirt and a tie, especially over Zoom. You're making a first impression. The language you use as well, and the stories you tell as well. There was once I heard a story of a candidate who interviewed well, but at the end of the interview started telling stories of personal nature, and they weren't bad stories. He wasn't telling secrets of stuff he had done that was untoward, but yet the interviewees perceived that he was being very informal and he didn't know them yet. And the way they looked at it was, okay, if he's being informal with us and he doesn't know us yet, what will he do when he's in front of a group? Does he have that on-off switch? Does he know what to say and what not to say? So I know that, sometimes people try to be informal because it's also a way to convey, it's a way to be personal, but be careful with that. This is one I like. This is kind of a play off a Michael Jordan quote talking about shooting and scoring, but this is for interviews. There is no I in team, but there is an interview. And why do I put that there? I know from personal experience that many of you don't like talking about yourself because you think it can be boastful. And at an interview, and I say this all the time, and if you're watching this and I've talked to you before, I've probably said it to you before. During an interview, if you are not going to advocate for yourself, nobody's going to advocate for you. During an interview, you do have to use I. And I know for many people who work in healthcare facilities management, and I think it's what makes the industry a little bit unique, you are in it for the greater good. You could probably make more money somewhere else. You could probably do without the headaches that you get on a daily basis, but you're not necessarily looking for the glory. You're not necessarily looking for the focus on you and on what you do. But during an interview, you do need to use I, and it goes with our first one there, talking about lack of specifics. It needs to be I-based. It needs to be accomplishment-based. You've accomplished things. You need to advocate for yourself. Now, this is kind of, our third final four of what can sink your job hopes. We will get feedback, and I will hear this, and I'm sure you have people in your life who you perceive as arrogant. And so what is the difference between arrogance and confidence, especially during an interview? Because none of us want to be perceived, I don't think, as being arrogant. And some of the feedback, I've gotten feedback before from candidates who have gone through, boy, that guy, that gal, they were really arrogant. And so I've thought about this a lot because, what is that balance between being perceived as being arrogant and being confident? Because it can really be a fine line. And as I said at the very beginning, sometimes that's in the eye of the person who is interviewing you. I think a way that I've come to think about it, and because I've dealt with these people before when I'm talking to them, have you ever been around a person who uses I all the time? I'm sure you have. And when I speak to people like that for roles we're recruiting for me, it comes right out. I just, wow, this person, it's all I. Now, and I know intuitively that in this business, it can't be all I. You work with a team. It's not, you're not the only one out there all the time. So I think if you're wondering what's the balance between arrogance and confidence, especially during the interview process, you need to work in we's, right? There is a place for I, but there's a place for we, and there's a place for they. The way I look at it from my experience, if I hear I all the time, I'm going to think you might be arrogant if I don't know you. And again, I'm making that judgment based probably not on a full body of work or evidence from you. But if I hear a lot of I know it can't be all you. So that's kind of where I land on the arrogance versus confidence. You need to use I, but it's a we and it's a they and it's a team. It can't be all you. Our fourth bullet, silence. I could only probably go 6 or 7 seconds on being silent. But, I've said this one before. Skilled interviewers, they utilize silence. They utilize just silence to get people to talk, because we try to fill that void when nobody's talking. We try to fill that void with talk. I'm sure you've probably noticed this. It happens in your personal life. It can happen with your kids at home. And when mine were younger, the silent part of it, they would always just, especially if they were in trouble, try to talk their way through. But on a professional level, a skilled interviewer will use silence to elicit more information out of a person they are interviewing. Don't fall for the trick. Answer the question fully, and then stop talking. Be comfortable with silence. Be comfortable sitting there and waiting. Now, relative to answering the question fully, that's the key when we talk about being comfortable with silence. If somebody asks you a question, especially during an interview, you do need to answer it and then stop talking. I had we were working with a client years ago, and he was interviewing a gentleman, and the question that the client asked the candidate was, how do you, how will you help this organization? How will you benefit the department? What will you do? And the answer was, I'll do whatever you need. And then the person stopped talking. That did not go over well. So, it's funny. I think that sometimes we think that we're answering the question by saying, I'll do whatever you want, which you could perceive as a good thing, right? I'll do whatever you want me to do. You want me to take out the trash? You want me to mop the floor? You want me to fix the boiler? You want me to lead a training? I can do it all for you. The way the interviewee or the client perceived that was, you didn't even answer my question, and then you stopped talking. So the key to silence, of course, if you're going to use it, and you should, is to answer the question and then stop talking. Answer it fully. Bonus one, now round, using your business email. This is another element that can sink your interview job title hopes. I see this when people correspond with me from their business email. I just always, I don't think less of them, but I don't, I think you need to separate your business email from your personal email, especially going for jobs. I know there are people out there who do it. They use that business email for everything. I don't think it looks good to begin with. We know, like, if you are corresponding during the day via email, you're looking for a job. No, we're not naive. Nobody's naive. We know that it happens out there. But for some reason, when it comes from your business email, it just seems worse. And it kind of goes, and again, I never disqualify anybody for that, but to the discretion of that person. So the bonus one, I would say, if you are searching for a job, if you're corresponding with an employer, use it from your personal email. This goes to another point relative to personal emails. I haven't seen a really interesting one lately, but in the history of doing this, you see some pretty creative email addresses out there. So you just want to make sure it's professional, that email handle is a professional one. So those are our interview final fours, these things that can sink your job title hopes. Thank you for watching this episode of the Healthcare Facilities Network.